name is Chris Matson. I'm the president of a large food service packaging brokerage company called Nexus. We are based throughout the entire Western region. And today we're holding a podcast to talk about some pending legislation over in the city of San Francisco that potentially could ban food service disposables inside the restaurant, as well as add a 25-cent tax per takeout container. So we're going to talk about that today, and I've got a special guest that I'd like to introduce. His name is Steve Sarver with San Francisco Soup Company and Ladle and Leaf. Steve, welcome.
Hey Chris, thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. Glad you could join me. You know, Steve, I found out about this legislation about 2 weeks ago, and it was really disturbing because I think the implications of this ban on non-foods disposables could have a very impactful economic devastation to a lot of the businesses in San Francisco related to the overall cost of what they're going to have to do with dishwashers, with hiring additional people, with having to install busing stations, melamine and dinnerware and glassware would all have to be purchased. If they banned disposables, they would have to, install 2 or 3 dishwashers in the back and have to hire probably 2 or 3 more people to load the dishwashers and to bus the restaurants. And so I wanted to get your input on this as far as what you think the impact is going to be, like, for example, to your own business in San Francisco.
Sure thing, Chris. So San Francisco Soup Company and Ladle and Leaf, my fast casual restaurants, we've been operating them for over 20 years in San Francisco. We're a local family business. We have 13 restaurants in total, and they're all fast casual. For the most part, we serve the busy lunch crowd. They come in real fast, right around 11:30, 12 o'clock. We serve hundreds of people every day, and then they're back out to their offices. And for the most part, that's our model, and we've been very successful doing that. We take a really small footprint, and we're a grab-and-go restaurant. But that doesn't mean that the food is low quality. It's really good, great quality food. We make our soups and salads with fine ingredients, and we look for inspiring and interesting ingredients and recipes, and we have a great loyal following. And they love us for the food that we provide to them in the format that we provide it to them. That's what they want. And the truth is, not a lot of our customers dine at our restaurants. Most of our restaurants have some seating, anywhere from 3 seats even up to 40 seats. But the vast majority of our customers are taking the food to go. With that said, there are some that do dine in, and this ordinance is particularly burdensome for those customers.
Yeah. Now tell me if you think this is right. I mean, if you took away food service packaging disposables inside of the restaurant, you're going to have to buy either melamine dinnerware or china. Yeah. You're also going to have to buy either glass or heavy plastic tumblers. The cost of that, I know because we do sell some of that, for each restaurant to handle hundreds of people a day, you're probably looking at about $10 to $17, maybe even $20,000 per store in dinnerware and glassware combined. Is that accurate?
I think we're looking at tens of thousands of dollars when you include the investment in the dishwashing facilities, installing them in San Francisco, and then the busing stations, the plates, the spoons, forks, all of that stuff's going to add up very significantly. We're not looking at a few $1,000s to be able to pull this off. You see, our kitchens aren't designed for warewashing.
Yeah.
They're designed for washing the pots and the pans and the equipment that we use to serve the soup and make the salads. But they're not designed specifically for this. I don't think we have even the space in our kitchens for this, to do it right. Because you need space for washing and also space for drying.
Yeah.
I don't know how
storage of the dinnerware, the glassware, the cutlery.
Yes, yeah. It's going to be incredibly burdensome on us, just to launch it, to get it going.
What about water? Water runs 4 to 5 cents a gallon typically for a commercial business. Mm-hmm. If you're running that much volume through 2, maybe 3 commercial dishwashers a day, what do you think that's going to do to your water bill?
Fortunately, we've never had to use this much water. Our water bills have been relatively low because of the efficiency of the operation we have. But I've heard of restaurants spending thousands of dollars a month on water where we don't do that in our model, which is how we can keep our costs lower to our guests. And again, that's part of what we do and why we do it.
Yeah. Plus you have dishwashing soap on top of the water bill.
That's right.
Right now you're using disposables that go into compost.
Correct.
And even that's now being banned.
I think you're right, Chris. We're not wasting as much water. We're not using as many chemicals because the vast majority of what we serve our food in is already compostable. And we're working toward 100% compostable. What is not compostable in our restaurants is recyclable.
Right. So Steve, we talked about the cost of dishwashers, we talked about water. What about labor?
That's another real challenge for us right now, Chris. I mean, I think everyone knows the cost of labor in San Francisco is really high with the minimum wage, the paid sick leave, the health care that we provide our employees in San Francisco. It's all great, but it has hit a tipping point. And if we need to add additional labor to bus the tables and clean the dishes, that's just going to push us further and further. I mean, as it is, a bowl of soup in San Francisco is going to cost you quite a bit. It's going to go up even more.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned about that.
Yeah.
I don't think our customers are prepared for that.
Right. I believe minimum wage now in San Francisco is $15 an hour. I mean, that's going to be tough if you have to add 2 additional people per restaurant potentially. One to bus the tables, because the public isn't always going to bus. So you've got to get out there and take the melamine and the china back to the dishwasher. Then you're going to need somebody to load the dishwasher.
Sure.
It's going to get expensive. What about this 25-cent tax that is also on the legislation? The city of San Francisco is talking about not just banning disposables inside the store, but they're also going to add a 25-cent tax per container. So the lid, the cup, the container, the straw, the napkin, the bag. I mean, somebody walking in just to get a dinner for a party of, let's say, 4 could pay potentially $8 in taxes because of the disposable packaging that goes out with them. And it's not just the 25-cent tax, but there's a sales tax on top of that, it's my understanding. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, I think one of the things that really needs to be cleared up with this ordinance is the multiple components to something sold. So, if you're selling someone a beverage with a cup and a lid, is that 2 charges? Is it 1 charge? What should the charge be? Most of us would prefer there are no charges at all.
Right.
But if there is going to be a charge to encourage consumers to bring their own, which is an understandable strategy that I largely support, we need to make sure that charge is capped and that it's easily applied. And I don't want to get into a little battle with my customers over, did you charge me 25 cents or 50 cents and why, and how did you get to that fee? I mean, that could create a really uncomfortable situation for us and our customers, and we don't want that. We want everyone to have an easy time when they're buying their food from us.
Yeah. If this actually did pass, and it passed the way that it's written, and let's say somebody comes in to order takeout for a party of 4 and they're paying as much as $4 or $5 extra for the packaging, how much of an impact do you think it'll have on your takeout business where people will just say, I can't afford it, not going to go there?
It's really hard to predict because I've never seen anything like this. I know what consumers want. Consumers want convenience, and that's why they're coming to us. I'm in favor of consumers bringing their own bowls and saving money. Here's an example. This bowl here is from San Francisco Soup Company. This is a bowl we've had for 15 years in our restaurants. And we sell it to our guests at a very low price. I think it's $3 for a bowl. And every time they bring this bowl back, we give them 25 cents off their meal. So for those people who want to do this, great. We encourage it. We've been doing this for a long time. If someone were to bring in their own bowl, we'd be happy to give them 25 cents off. But the reality is, through our experience, that most people aren't doing this. It's less than 1% of our customers actually bring this bowl or another bowl in when we're offering 25 cents off.
Right.
So I think we should continue to encourage this. My business wants to participate in this program, we have been doing it on our own, but to get into an uncomfortable conversation with someone about how much we're charging them based on the number of pieces in their takeout item.
It sounds crazy.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think we need to lead people in the right direction, but all these mandates and fees, I think that's a real challenge.
Yeah. Steve, what about the fact, what branding? You know, you can't put logos typically on china and melamine inside of a restaurant. You can, but it's very expensive. You're going to lose, like if this passes, all of the great branding and the marketing of your logo and the packaging. What kind of an impact is that going to have on your marketing message?
You know, ultimately, Chris, for us, we want people to enjoy the food and spread the word, and you know, we put a lot of investment into our marketing. So, you know, we want to make sure our marketing goes as far as it can.
Yeah. You know, when we add all this up, I did some research. It adds up to about $149,000 per restaurant in San Francisco if the legislation passes the way it's written now. I don't see how restaurants in San Francisco can sustain that. I mean, if you have 3, 4, 5 locations and you're looking at $150, let's say, $1,000 per location, you could be looking at $600,000 in renovations and melamine and glassware and china just to get ready to be within the ordinance. It seems very expensive for restaurant owners, and I know restaurants, there's more leaving San Francisco these days than there are opening in San Francisco. I'm sure you've heard about that.
I have. You know, there's actually been a lot in the news recently about the challenges for small businesses and restaurants in particular, with the high cost of doing business, the high rents, how hard it is to find labor, the high cost of housing for the people that we try to find to live here. And the idea of raising costs more on businesses and the public at this time just doesn't seem to make sense.
It doesn't. I did a little research online recently, and Mercury News here in the Bay Area reported that every year 7 trillion tiny pieces of plastic, roughly equal to 1 million pieces each for every man, woman, and child in the Bay Area, flow into San Francisco Bay based on a comprehensive scientific study. The 3-year study found that billions of pieces of microplastic particles smaller than 5 millimeters each, or roughly the size of a pencil eraser, pour through the Bay Area's 40 sewage treatment plants every year. The particles come from synthetic fibers in clothing, fleece jackets, washing machines, wipes flushed down the drain, sewer pipes, diapers. 300 times more of the relentless toxic confetti, the study revealed, comes from storm drains. The largest source are the particles. The drains collect plastic litter from roads, foam, rubber bits, car tires, other sources. Very little of this is food service disposable packaging. And the research I've also done, and I wrote a publication about it, you can download this on our Nexus website under our services. It's called our Food Service Materials Guide. You will find in here that it is the rivers in Asia that are really depositing most of the debris that goes into the ocean. Our love affair with single-use items plays a major role in the global marine debris problem. Myth or fact? The fact is it's not even close. According to the report, Plastic Waste Inputs from Land into the Ocean, published in Science in 2015, over half of all marine debris comes from 6 Asian countries: China, Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. The US came in 20th on the list, and Canada was 112th. Similarly, in 2017, a study called The Export of Plastic Debris by Rivers into the Sea, published in Environmental Science and Technology, found that 10 rivers are responsible for roughly 90% of the global input of plastic into the sea. These rivers include the Yangtze, the Yellow, the Hai, the Pearl, the Amur, Mekong, Indus, Ganges, Delta in Asia, and the Niger River and the Nile in Africa. Most of the plastic is not even coming from disposable packaging here in the United States that ends up in the ocean. That's the shocking truth that nobody really wants to talk about. In my opinion, it isn't really the substrates that we're using in food service packaging, disposables in restaurants. The substrates are not the problem. The packaging is not the problem. The problem is the lack of infrastructure that the cities do or do not set up properly. Plastic t-shirt bags were banned in California, but You can recycle plastic t-shirt bags, and you can grind them up, and you can use them again. Foam, expanded polystyrene, number 6 on the recycling scale, was banned pretty much throughout the major cities in California over the last couple of years. Foam is actually recyclable. You can compress it down, melt it down, and use it again. But there's no infrastructure by the cities with dedicated route trucks and collection systems to bring it back into an afterlife to be used again. That's really the core of the problem here. It's not banning disposables. Would you agree, Steve?
Yes, I think that what we really need to focus on is how are we making an impact and what can we do to help consumers make the best choices.
Yeah.
And I think that the vast majority of restaurants in San Francisco have moved toward compostables, and we all have 3-stream garbage collection in our restaurants. We have compostable, recyclable, and trash, and we need to continue to educate and move our customers in that direction. The idea of creating higher barriers or higher costs and making it more difficult for business to operate is really not going to get us in the right direction.
Yeah.
And the waste coming from quick service restaurants in San Francisco, in mine specifically, it's going into office buildings where it's all being collected and sorted and going to the right place.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't feel like we're the ones causing the pollution in the ocean.
Yeah.
But I'm still in favor of moving in the right direction. For example, if there were restaurants that had a lot of dine-in customers, maybe those restaurants could participate in a program that was supported by the city and helped in some ways for more foodware washing. But in a restaurant like mine, where 10% of the customers eat in and 90% dine out, it just doesn't make sense for us to put that kind of infrastructure in place, increase our costs by so much, which will ultimately hurt our business and or get passed on to the consumer. It just doesn't make sense.
Right, very good point. You know, we have a special call-in guest. I'd like to introduce Emily Abraham. She's the Public Policy Manager for the Chamber of Commerce in San Francisco. Emily, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Emily, we'd like your input on this pending legislation, if you don't mind. We'd love to hear where the Chamber stands and what you think the overall impact's going to be on the restaurant infrastructure and economic community within the San Francisco Bay Area.
Sure. So this legislation, known as the Promotion of Reusable Food Serviceware, just to give you some background of, kind of where it came from and how it was sort of dreamed up, it came out of Supervisor Peskin's office. He represents the North Beach area of San Francisco, and it came out as a means to reduce waste in San Francisco. This is part of the larger goal of the city. It's called their Zero Waste Goals. And this is to reduce landfill disposal by 50% by the year 2030. So, the Chamber supports the city's moves to be more sustainable, but at the same time, we want to make sure that all of these unforeseen consequences are explored and make sure that businesses of all sizes in San Francisco aren't affected. And we do really believe that the legislation written as is will have a lot of pretty drastic effects on businesses, small and even large. The Small Business Commission in San Francisco also had this opinion. It was last heard there on October 17th, and they moved to only support an amended version. So since then, the Chamber has come up with some proposed amendments that we have since submitted to Supervisor Peskin's office for review. I think one issue to touch on here that you guys briefly touched on earlier is this issue around equity. As the legislation stands, each to-go item is 25 cents. So like you were saying, you go to McDonald's and you get a cup, your soda in a cup with a lid and a straw. Napkins in the bags probably aren't included, but if you want a fork or a knife, you're looking at $1.50 in to-go charges. And say you're a person who can only afford to eat out at fast food, or you live in a single residency occupancy unit with no kitchen, and maybe you're forced to eat off, fast food dollar menus. It's quite possible that, your cost for those to-go items could be more expensive than your meal. So the chamber is
Wow.
proposing to reduce the fee to 10 cents, as well as put a cap on that fee to 75 cents. So if you go out to eat, and even if you're getting a bunch of food for all your friends, no matter what, it shouldn't go above 75 cents, since it's just the sentiment of, trying to reform consumer behavior. It shouldn't necessarily be that large of a punishment.
Yeah. Emily, if you're a restaurant in San Francisco and you're watching this podcast, is there somebody you can call or email or reach out to express your own opinion about the pending legislation?
Definitely. So, the chamber, we have a coalition going with supporting these amendments, and we've gone to all the hearings about this, and everyone that's interested is more than welcome to contact me. I'm happy to share my email with you guys, and you can send it out to anyone who reaches out to you with questions. I would also really encourage, if you're a San Francisco business, to reach out to Supervisor Peskin's office. His information is posted online. You can call, email him or his aides, and they are in a period of listening right now, and they'll be able to hear your concerns, and hopefully, that can be considered in the amended version.
What are San Francisco restaurants telling you at this point? What's the feedback you're getting from the individual owners?
Across the board, I think, I'm always very proud of our San Francisco businesses. I think that a lot of them are trying to be sustainable. And I think, just as, Steve has been saying, there's some just exceptional businesses that are doing all they can to be sustainable. So with that in mind, they're not pushing against this necessarily, but they do recognize that this is just a little too much. The logistics of it are pretty difficult, especially if you're a to-go business model that, you'd have to totally restructure your business. You'd have to buy a dishwasher, and you'd have to hire dishwashing staff in an economy where, hiring someone in the tech industry is easier than hiring a minimum wage job. There's just a lot of, outside pressures that make this kind of difficult. So, based on this input, we are also pushing for an amendment to offer an exemption for restaurants that, we have a list of them: nonprofits, limited restaurants, say like a deli and a grocery store that's main function isn't to be a dine-in restaurant. We also would like to exclude businesses that have over 50% of off-site diners. So those are models that, I go out to eat at lunch and I grab something and I bring it back to my office. I'm not going to go sit in and eat somewhere, and the business model shouldn't have to fully change to, have tables and chairs and a dishwasher.
Yeah, all very valid points. What are your thoughts, Emily, about, it sounds like the momentum is to get this done because the state of California has a mandate to go to zero waste by the year 2040. Public locations like San Francisco Airport have gone to 100% compostable disposables. The city of Alameda has banned plastic and gone 100% compostable. What about at just a minimum for the city of San Francisco for these restaurants so that they don't have to install dishwashers? What about just going to 100% compostable disposables and not mandating that they use reusable dinnerware or glassware inside the stores and eliminate the 25-cent tax? Do you think that that's a possibility?
So just within the past 18 months, as a part of this zero waste goal, you've probably heard of the straw ban in San Francisco. That was put in place. And then also the refuse separating ordinance. And that is when you go to a store or a restaurant, you have your green bin, your blue bin, and your black bin, and you sort all of your waste. So those are two pieces of legislation that have fairly recently been enacted, and I think it's of our opinion that there hasn't been enough studies to see how that's impacted our landfill use. So to add one more zero waste goal legislation when we already have two that we're still looking at the results of, it seems like a bit much.
Yeah, great. Anything else you'd like to add, Emily?
I would like to mention that there is a lot of fear around this. And I would like to caution people that I do think that some version of this might pass. But for restaurants that could be affected, definitely reach out to the chamber, and also be aware that there's a waiver that you can apply for. And the chamber's pushing to get that waiver extended from 1 year to 5 years. And we're also pushing to get exemptions made for a lot of the businesses like both of yours that could be affected. So just keep in mind that there might be ways for you to appeal to obtain a waiver or an exemption.
Excellent. Emily, thank you so much for being on our podcast. I really appreciate it. Steve, anything else you want to add?
Yes, thank you. Really just two main points. First is restaurants that sell very little on-site dining, like mine, they're 80% to go. I don't think these restaurants should be included in this ordinance and have to expend so much money for such a small part of their business.
Yeah, good point.
And secondly, it'd be nice if this could apply to new restaurants only. Again, such a major burden for restaurants that have already built out, probably don't have the right facilities, to make them go through waivers every year to not have to participate. That just seems crazy. Let's just apply this going forward if we have to do it at all.
Yeah, very good point. All right, well that wraps up our podcast for today. If you would like to take further action to help this cause not go through, you can contact Emily Abraham at the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce or Supervisor Aaron Peskin in the city of San Francisco. Thank you for joining us today.